This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and what we have blown apart here is something that some of our friends from the UK will probably be familiar with. This is an HMV, short for His Master's Voice, model 2008 monaural tube record player from about 1964 or so. These don't show up in the United States very often. I found this on one of the auction sites, and it was located in the USA, and it was also very cheap, and I was the only bidder. Now you might be asking yourself, why would you be the only bidder? You know, you'd think somebody else would have jumped on that. Well, I think this is probably what scared them off. See this plug here? See, in the UK their power is 230 volt 50 cycles, whereas our power in the United States is 115 volts 60 cycles. So in the United States you just can't plug one of these in and use it. I don't know how we're going to convert this. I looked at the schematic that I found online before I even purchased it, and it uses a single tube, a 6GW8 I think, which is a triode and a pentode in the same envelope. It does use a power transformer, but I don't see anything on the schematic that indicates where the power transformer has a tap on it to where it can be ran off of 115 to 120 volts. And the same goes for the motor on the record changer. Now, we could buy a step-up transformer to step up our 115 volts to the needed 230 volts needed to run this record player, but there still might be another problem. Seeing as how this motor was designed to run on 50 hertz and our frequency is 60 hertz, the motor might run fast. So I'm thinking what we might end up having to do to this is replace the motor with one from a USA issued BSR changer, and I'm sure I can round up one of those motors out of my junk pile, and we might have to replace the power transformer with one that has a primary that's designed for 115 volts. Of course, if it comes to that, I'll keep the old parts in case this thing ever ends up going back to its home country, that whoever gets it can convert it back for use on their mains voltage and frequency. But first, we've got some things we've got to work out. I don't know whether this thing got knocked around in shipping or what, but the amplifier is loose and the power transformer is just dangling inside of the cabinet here, and the little phenolic terminal board on the speaker is torn loose. I hope I can salvage the speaker. It's kind of a neat looking speaker. Here's the emblem inside of the lid. It looks very similar to the RCA Victor emblem that was used for decades here in the USA. And like I said, we have a BSR Monarch record changer that for all intents and purposes is just like the ones that were in a lot of USA issued record players, except this one has a 230 volt motor on it. As far as the cosmetics go, we got a couple of dings here on the case. One of the knobs is broken and we're missing 3 out of the 4 feet, but in the grand scheme of things that's no big deal. The chrome here is in nice shape. I will say this particular record player, just looking at it, is a cut above or actually a few cuts above what was typically available in the mid-60s in the United States. In the mid-60s in the USA, if you bought a tabletop mono record player with an automatic record changer, what you typically got was a power transformerless series string amplifier that used a single 25C5 or 25EH5 or 25L6 tube with the heater wired in series with the 90 volt phono motor. If you were lucky, you might have gotten a tone control, but some bargain basement models didn't even have that. And since it only had a single tube with no driver stage, it required a crystal cartridge with an output of around 3 to 4 volts to sufficiently drive the amplifier for decent volume. And one of the main disadvantages of those high output crystal cartridges is they track heavy and they have low compliance. They have to track heavy in order to, generally the less compliant the cartridge is, the heavier the tracking and the greater the output voltage. And of course those heavy tracking cartridges weren't always the best for records, especially stereo records, and as the cartridge aged, the suspension got even harder and the cartridge was even more destructive to records. Now, this particular record player here, like I've already told you, originated in the UK. It uses a power transformer chassis and it uses a 2-stage amplifier, even though the 2 stages are combined in a single 9-pin vacuum tube. And we have separate bass and treble controls, as well as of course a volume control and a pilot light to indicate that the machine is turned on. We also have a tape recorder jack as well as an external speaker jack, which are also things you typically didn't get on a similar styled mono record player from the USA. Looking at the schematic, you could use the tape recorder jack for both playback and recording. For example, you could plug the output, you could plug this tape recorder jack into the input of a tape recorder and record directly from the phonograph pickup. Now back then most tape recorders were vacuum tube based, which means they have a high impedance input, which a ceramic cartridge needs. If you were to plug this into a modern solid state tape recorder with your typical 47k ohm line input, the results wouldn't be too good. Or you could turn the phono motor off and plug your tape recorder into this and use this for an external amplifier. Okay, so let's slide the motor board out of the way and have a look at what we've got to work with here. This does look a bit different as far as the design, as far as typical USA made amplifiers, but I believe we can handle it. Here's the underside of the record changer. As you can see, it looks pretty much like any BSR from that era. Even the motor looks identical, but according to the label here, it's a 230 volt motor, so that'll have to be changed. Somebody I was talking to on the record player group, when we were discussing the use of an external step-up transformer and the frequency issue, they suggested I file down the motor capstan. Well, yes, that would work, but if this ever went back to its native country, then that would make it harder for the person to convert it back. So I think it would be better if we have a problem with speed with a step-up transformer, then I just think it would be better just to leave everything alone, even if I have to, convert this thing over. Like I said, I can replace this motor with one from a USA issued BSR, and I'm sure I can find a power transformer around here somewhere that will work, and then we can just put the parts in a box somewhere and keep them close to the record player, and if this ever goes to somebody else, then I can give them the parts. Now, here's the chassis. As you can see, the power transformer is just dangling loose. The chassis is loose here. And the speaker, that's a nice looking speaker, but the terminal board on it's pretty torn up. Like I said, I hope we can salvage that. This does not unplug from the record changer, so we're going to have to unsolder some wires to separate all this. Alright, here's our tube. This is a Mazda valve ECL 86 made in England. And I don't know if that 2J is a date code or not, but yeah, our friends in the UK refer to these as valves, whereas we refer to them as vacuum tubes. If you want to get down to it, their term for it is actually more correct, but this ECL 86 is a pretty pricey tube, and I know of one Newcomb school record player that used this particular tube under the 6GW8 version, or whatever the American equivalent is. Okay, we got the amplifier almost out, and my neighbor's trying to get me a copyright strike, but yeah, now we have to unsolder the wires that connect to these jacks on the front here, and then unsolder the speaker wires, and then unsolder the wires on the record changer. It looks like somebody's already been in here, because you see where some wires have been cut and then they soldered on to those terminals there, so that'll have to be fixed. And here's some of the bolts that was holding everything together inside of the cabinet, and the speaker is held on by these little screw-on rubber things. That's a new one on me. Alright, here's the speaker removed. I cut that wire going to it because I didn't want to risk breaking the wire going up into the voice coil there, so whenever I repair or replace this terminal strip, we'll just use a new piece of wire if necessary. Now, the name on this looks to be Richard Allen, Radio Limited, made in England. Okay, we have the transformer remounted to the chassis. Of course, it's probably going to be coming off again, but at least we don't have things dangling now. And we can see that the British used the tube retainer clips similar to what the Japanese used. I wished more USA made products would have had that. It would have sure kept the tubes from falling out of the sockets during transit. Now this block here, that's the bridge rectifier, and it's probably a selenium job. Now that looks very similar to some of the ones that was used in the German radios, and those do go bad, so if that's bad we can just replace it with a silicon bridge and be done with it. Okay, here's the cartridge. It was also loose, but I found the mounting screw inside the record player. I'd be surprised if this is any good, and these are almost impossible to find, so we're gonna probably have to substitute something more modern for this. At least with this having a two-stage amp, I can use a more modern cartridge without having to build a preamp stage. Now these other two leads were tucked under the tone arm. You would have used those if you were using a stereo cartridge. Now their music selection over there certainly isn't my cup of tea, but I suppose it could be a whole lot worse than what it is. They could be playing some mumble rap. Alright, here's the motor, the shaft, the capstan, whatever, and I can tell that it looks like the shaft is a little bit bigger in diameter than what we would encounter on a USA issued model, but like I said, this won't be a problem. I can just sub the motor for one out of a USA issued changer, and we can find a power transformer that's designed for 120 volts AC and substitute it for the one that's in there, and we ought to be good to go. Now as far as the record changer, it's going to need the typical cleaning and lubrication that most of these need. Unfortunately, I don't have time to really do much to this today. I just wanted to take it apart and stabilize everything where it wouldn't get torn up more than it already is. So this will be part one. Part two will come along sometime within the coming months or years, and we'll try to get this thing going again. I found this gray pin in there. I have no idea where it came from, but I'll leave it in here for future use. Oh wow, they're playing something from back in the 60s now. I can't believe it. Yeah, oh darn, they just turned it off. I guess, oh there it comes back again. Okay, you see 3 out of the 4 feet are missing, and then we have this smaller bumper. I have no idea where it goes, but this should be an interesting project when we get back on it. And if any of our friends from the UK who are watching this that would like to shed some knowledge or insight or anything like that about this model, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to comment. As far as HMV, I'm not really familiar with the current status of that company, but I'm sure it's like so many of the other companies. They went out of business a long time ago and the name got bought out by some importing company. And this is generally what happens to those once great old brand names that once stood tall and proud. They get bought out by these importers and the name gets slapped on garbage such as this, or as our friends from the UK would probably call it, rubbish such as this, and that's a very accurate description. One time Crosley was a big outfit. You know, it would take me a long time to go into everything that Crosley was into, but you can read up on Powell Crosley Jr. and the Crosley Radio Corporation. I think in 1945 or 6, somewhere around in there, the original Crosley Corporation was bought out by Avco Aviation Corporation. But I think Powell Crosley Jr. remained on the board of directors until his death in the early 60s. Well, or was it 57? Heck, I need to go read up on it myself. But I know that Avco shuttered the Crosley brand in about 56 or 57 because it was no longer profitable. So as far as electronics go, the Crosley brand was shuttered until the 1980s. I know the Crosley brand appeared on some 1980s North American Philips televisions, which were the same as Magnavox, Philco, and Sylvania. I don't know what the connection was there, but for the most part, Crosley didn't start appearing on electronics again until the late 80s, when some importer bought the rights to use the brand name and started slapping it on all of this imported Chinese garbage, to include radios and record players and stereo systems. And of course, since the late 80s, the quality of the stuff has gone down even more than the low quality that it was to begin with when they first started in the late 80s. Yes, I understand that even some of the original Crosley products, such as the radios, were sometimes cheaply made, but back then cheaply made didn't mean cutting corners to the max and turning out a poor quality product. Back then, you know, they figured out ways to save money on making stuff without overly compromising on performance and build quality. This crap here, I've seen cardboard cased kitty record players from the 70s that was built better than this garbage is, and I'm sure Mr. Crosley would be rolling over in his grave if he knew that his name was being applied to this crap from China. Yeah, and listening to all that crap across the street got me in the mood to play some of these records.
Of America, land of the brave and the free. If you get a few things straight for me, the Supreme Court and some of our legislators have changed so many things that our Constitution and our forefathers stood for. I'm all confused. First, I'd like to know if I'll be permitted to plant white and black peas in separate rows of equal length, or will I have...
But yet I got a whole pile of these type of records here. Stuff I picked up at yard sales over the years. I'll tell you a little story about that in just a minute.
From the south, there where the cotton grows so tall, and at the age of 17 he heard his country's call. He kissed his poor old mother.
Southern town, where a motley-looking crew of crackpots, beatniks, do-gooders, and broken-down entertainers have assembled to go on a march. And now we'll try to get a word from the commanding general of the occupation troops. General, sir, why are you here?
Hi. We're here to protect those sweet, darling marchers from the mean old citizens of this state.
We thought at first you were on your way to Cuba or Vietnam.
Heavens, don't say that. You frighten me.
But, General, you are a brave man. You have a chest full of ribbons, aren't they, for battle?
Yes, sweetie. They're for the Battle of Little Rock, Ole Miss, Birmingham, Montgomery, Selma, those darlings, Macomb, and Bogalusa. And the Papa Bird has promised me the Order of the Purple Integrator, if I'm good. Heavens, I gotta run now. I think Marty wants me. We shall...
I see a big limousine pulling up. It must be someone big. Are you connected with the march, sir?
Why, sure is, Johnny Reb, I sure is.
What is your connection?
I is the field agitator for Loco.
Loco, that's a new one. What do those initials stand for?
Well, Johnny Reb, they stands for lots of communists on hand.
Oh, yeah, we heard some of you would be here. Where do you get that big car?
Well, I got that big car from Uncle Big Bird. He wants to help us overcome. But we is only going to march when they have the TV cameras out.
Yeah, don't I know you from somewhere?
Well, I is the famous king who was the pilot of that ill-fated Flight 105.
Now, remember, have you been back to Jackson lately?
Never again, Johnny Reb. I is still picking the pine needles, the barbed wire, and the bird shot out on my seat.
Yeah. Well, let's move our mic over this way and attempt to get an interview where what looks to be a bunch of beatniks having a beer party. Oh, excuse me, Reverend, could we interview you? You are a minister, aren't you? I mean, your clothes...
Hey, baby, I've heard that. They tell me that's what I am, a minister. That's what I am.
Well, what is the name of your church?
The liberal thinking, wine drinking, poetry reading, double clutching, folk singing, marijuana smoking, hip church of Chicago.
Where in Chicago is your church located?
At my pad, Daddy. Where else? See those cats over there with the beards? I mean beards. They is all my deacons.
Reverend, how long have you been ordained?
Man, like about 3 days, and called me doctor. Marty said all us cats could be doctors.
Yeah, well, thank you very much there, man. I mean, doctor. And good marching. Before we conclude, let's try to get a word from a lifelong citizen of this community. Mr. Ed, I've seen you around here quite a bit. What do you think about all this?
I say, son, I think it's the best thing that's happened to the South. And boy, it's been real good for my business.
What is your business?
Well, son, you see, son, I'm in the manufacturing business, boy, cotton and steel.
And what do you manufacture?
Well, boy, you see, I make Confederate flags and white sheets in my cotton mill, and Confederate license tags and never pins and switchblade knives in my steel mill. And business has been mighty good for my brother-in-law, old Big Red, too.
What does Big Red do?
Well, now, son, boy, you know what Big Red does, son. He sells bootlegs to all them integrators, and boy, it's the greatest thing that's ever happened. We shall
Okay, and this next one, we better not play that one. That would get us in big trouble. What's this one? Flight NAACP 105 by the Son of Mississippi. When good old Ross comes rolling along, a song about Ross Barnett. And then let's roll again with Ross. Linden and Winter. And why did you leave us, John Bell? And another copy of the Flight 105 thing. Beat up copy of Johnny Reb. Another copy of Flight NAACP 105, and another one we better not play, or at least not the A side. That would get us in trouble too. You know, everybody's so sensitive now and just looking for a reason to be offended by something. You just have to watch what you say and do now, and frankly I'm getting tired of it. I know a while back on one of the groups that I'm in, we were talking about people always constantly wanting something for nothing, and trying to talk people down off the price, and I made the statement about jewing people down, and the administrator of that group got their panties in a knot and sent me a private message letting me know that they deleted my post because what I said was a racial slur. Well, no, there's nothing racial about it. It's just a freaking expression. It's one that I've heard all kind of people use all my life, and there's nothing wrong with it. You know, if something like, if the expression "Jew me down" or "Jew you down" offends you, then I think you're probably the one that needs to look at your own self instead of worrying about somebody else.
Just driving around and ended up in the colored part of town, and you see an old-time one-room shack with a great big TV antenna. Then you look out in the back, you can always see a Cadillac, and inside there's about...
Yeah, but that reminds me of a story I said I was going to tell you a number of years ago. A black lady brought me a all-in-one shelf stereo system CD player thing for repair, and she said she'd taken it to another shop and they couldn't do anything with it, so she found out about me and brought it to me. Well, when I tore it apart, I found a CDR in there, and when I played it, it was this kind of stuff here on it. And the first thing that came to mind was, yeah, whoever had this before me left that in there, and she's gonna get it back and find it in there and think I left it in there, and then I'm gonna catch all kind of hell. So I told her what I found, and she said, yeah, I know that's in there. She said, you know, that's just comedy. You know, I don't take that literal. I take it for the comedy aspect of it. And I said, well, okay then. I said, you know, I just wanted you to be sure because I didn't want you to think that I had left that in there, and I didn't want you getting mad at me over it. So, but no, she was cool with it and she knew all about it. But that just goes to show the difference in some people. You know, not everybody takes things so literal. I've seen people on some of the Facebook record groups that I'm in post records like this, and oh boy, some of the ones on there want to have them hunted down and thrown in federal prison. You know, they think records like this ought to be destroyed. Well, I don't happen to think so. My thoughts on that sort of thing, if a particular record offends me, whether it's mumble rap or whatever it is, nobody's holding a gun to my head to make me buy it. It's like you can't sell records like this on Discogs because it might offend some little snowflake. And like I said, I don't care what kind of records they sell on Discogs or eBay or anywhere else. If I don't like it, if it rubs me the wrong way, then I don't have to buy it. I don't have to listen to it. But you know, the way I look at it, don't take away the opportunity for someone who might want it to buy it. You know, if the truth be known, I would like to get one of the big Newcomb record players with a 12-inch speaker in the lid and play one of these sure enough politically incorrect sides to some of the folks over here, but that might result in my house getting shot up, so you know, better not do that. Alright, anyway, enough babbling on. If we still have a YouTube channel after this little last segment here, then we'll get on the HMV record player one of these days and some other things too. But right now, I need to get off of here and get inside the house where I won't have to listen to this crap anymore that I'm hearing in the background. Oh yeah, and something else that rubs me raw. You got all these rap records out there with all kind of vulgar lyrics concerning things they'd like to do to women and white people and that sort of thing. But you know, that's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. But you know, let a Johnny Rebel record get played or come up for sale, and the liberals just have a crybaby hissy fit over it. You know, it's just all part of the liberal double standard that's so prevalent in society today. pretty much all boils down to. If it's something they don't like, then you know that has to be banned and wiped out and everybody hypnotized and made to forget about it. But you know, if it's something we do like, then you know we have to shove all that down everybody's throat, whether they go along with it or not. And there's so much more I could say about how screwed up this world is today. You know, seeing things that I never dreamed that we would see, but I won't go into all that. But I'll get off of here for now, and like I said, if we still have a YouTube channel after this, then we will get on with the record player repair and some more projects down the road.